We begin with our fourth session, and we begin what some consider to be the second year of Jesus' ministry. Some think it's just a continuation of the first, but let's just, for the sake of it, allow that perhaps this is the beginning of the second year. We will begin this second year by reading from the 12th chapter of Matthew. Now, we'll spend a good bit of time in the 12th chapter of Matthew. It says, beginning with verse 1, "At that time, Jesus went through the cornfields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some ears of corn and eat them." Note, this is the Sabbath. "When the Pharisees saw this," here we go again. It's like Jesus and the Pharisees were dogging each other's steps. And the question was, who would get who first, in a sense. "They said to him, 'Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath.' He answered, 'Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple desecrate the day and yet are innocent? I tell you that one greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. I desire mercy, not sacrifice." Folks, that's a theme of the Scripture. When you have exhausted your study of the Gospels, which may take you a while, I recommend that you go and start with the word mercy. Go to the Old Testament, look up chesed in the Hebrew word, and just study mercy. Because Jesus, in another place, said that's the thing to do. But he said one other thing about the Sabbath that I think is fascinating. And it's the same story, but this part of it comes from Mark chapter 2, verses 23 through 28. And he says in verse 27, "Then he said to them," as condensing this, "The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath." At this point, Jesus was establishing a whole new thing. Legalism said, you were made for the Sabbath, you will keep the rules, we'll kill you if you don't. Jesus comes along and says, "Oh, you got to understand, the way I designed all of this is the season of His favor. I didn't make the Sabbath so I could make you do something. I made the Sabbath for your benefit. Sabbath was created for you, not you for the Sabbath." Now, go with me to Mark chapter 3. Another time, he went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Now, he went into the synagogue. This was a synagogue in Capernaum. If you ever go there, you'll discover there is a synagogue remains there, which was probably built around, I understand, the 2nd or 3rd century. But it could very well be the very site where they built on top of it, where Jesus actually did this. You can almost see it when you're there. Jesus kind of regularly went to the synagogue. It was his tradition in a way, a good tradition. He took the apostles with him. Now the apostles, remember, basically walked clueless. They seemed to never know what was going on. It's like, well, today we're going to the synagogue. And Jesus walks in, and they're probably kind of, where are we going to sit down? But when Jesus comes into the synagogue, you see, he comes with a whole different thought. Often when we, I don't like this word, go to church, we tend to go with the thought, I hope they bless me today. I really need a blessing. It's been a tough week. I just need to be blessed, And we find a seat where we don't have to sit next to someone we don't like. And we sit down and we think, okay, preacher, bless me. You have 20 minutes to bless me. Now, Jesus didn't go to the synagogue with that kind of thought in mind. Instead, when he arrives in the synagogue, the thought is, I'm going to bless somebody. I wonder who it is. I wonder what would happen if we all arrived at the synagogues of our lives with that thought in mind. Oh, I can't wait for today. I'm going to bless somebody. And we all just sort of came in with that thought looking around. I'm going to bless somebody today. Is it you? Is it? So Jesus comes with an entirely different thought. He's kind of looking around, not for a seat so much as, I wonder if there's anybody here who needs me. Yeah? Wow. So he comes in. A man with a shriveled hand was there. Now that thickens the plot, doesn't it? Already the tension rises. You know that Jesus by now has probably spotted him. Aha! The disciples, I don't think, had spotted him. They're still... Some of them, now this wasn't the disciples, this would have been the Pharisees, were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. So they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. Isn't this amazing? I mean, here they are. It's like, don't you touch him. He's ours. This is the Sabbath, and you wouldn't heal, would you, on the Sabbath? Do you see them squinting at him? Now, the thing is, they knew that he would. See, this was the nice thing about it. It's like, we got him. We got him. Because we know. I think that the Pharisees really understood Jesus probably better than the apostles did. The apostles weren't looking. They weren't looking for, who can we heal today, you know. But the Pharisees knew, if Jesus arrives, somebody's going to be healed. And they were watching him. So they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, stand up in front of everyone. Then Jesus asked them, which is lawful on the Sabbath? To do good or to do evil? To save life or to kill? Well, how would you like to have him ask that question of you? See, it's one of my favorite studies in the Gospels is the questions that are asked in the Gospels. Hunt them up. It's really fun because you get the questions that people ask of themselves. You get the questions that they ask of Jesus. You get the questions that are sort of rhetorical questions. But you really want to see the good questions. It's when Jesus starts asking the questions. It's like, uh-oh. Let's hurry up and get out of here before he starts asking the questions. And now Jesus is asking the questions. They're thinking, will he heal on the Sabbath? And of course he would. And Jesus says to the man, stand up. I want them to see you. They want a show. We're going to make a show out of this. Then he says, all right, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath? Is it right to do evil on the Sabbath? Which would you do? Would you want to save a life on the Sabbath, or would you want to kill somebody on the Sabbath? Tell me what I should do, fellas. Don't look. And then I want you to see this. This is a very important moment. He looked round at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, stretch out your hand. Now here's one of the places where it is recorded that Jesus became very angry. Now, this is fascinating to me. It's almost incompatible, isn't it, with the baby Jesus, meek and mild, that we think of, that he would be angry. Now, if Jesus were to walk in here right now and stop and look at us in anger, what do you think it would be for? You know, we'd probably go through, oh, he saw that thought I had last week. I know he would, you know. We tend to get that kind of legalistic, but it wasn't for those sorts of things at all. But it was for the stubbornness, the hard-heartedness, the self-centeredness of their hearts. They could care less that somebody there needed help. They could care less about that. They had their system and their rules. And for that reason, Jesus looked around at them in anger. They did not love people as he did. So So he says to the man, stretch out your hand. Now, I love this too, because do you realize this man had some choices to make here? One of them, as Jesus came to him, he could have just sort of put his shriveled hand behind him and said, sir, I know what you have in mind. But look, sir, you know, I don't know if you realize this, but we are being watched. And these people watching us, they're the important people in this town. And, you know, they're my friends, and I work for them, and I'm mortgaged to them, you know. And look, if you heal me, sir, I'd be ruined. And anyway, I've kind of gotten used to this anyway. So thank you, but no thank you. And you know, I've seen people do that. I've seen people adopt that approach. You know, God, don't really move in my life, or don't fill me with yourself or anything like that. You know, we're being watched, you know. And if I really sort of become filled with you, you know, well, I'll lose my job and my friends and so forth. So that was an option. That was an option. Now let's assume that it was his right hand that was shriveled. And Jesus says, reach out your hand. You know what he could have done? You know the concept, put your best foot forward. I mean, show your strengths. And we have a tendency to do that. If I were to send you all home and say, I want you to go back to your archives and bring me one of your old high school report cards, which one will you bring? You know, the best one you can find, if you can find one. But this man did what we have to do when we come into the presence of Jesus and want his touch. He reached out his weakness, you know, and he discovered it to be whole. Well, can you see that as Jesus walks along, he is baiting these Pharisees? It's almost like he's looking for a way to just jam their hard-heartedness down their throats. But he doesn't do it with the thought, find me a Pharisee, I'll mess up his life. No, no, no. He's just looking for people to do good, where he can do good. And it just so happens that the Pharisees were there not looking to do good at all. In fact, as a result of this, the Pharisees, this is Mark 3:6, chapter 3, verse 6. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. Folks, hatred and religiosity and politics makes strange bedfellows. Can you believe the Pharisees getting together with the Herodians against their common enemy, this dangerous man called Jesus, who goes around healing people? Wow. Now we continue reading in Matthew chapter 12, because we have here an awesome statement. I want to begin reading with verse 15 of Matthew chapter 12. But when Jesus knew it, that the Pharisees went out and plotted against him, how they might destroy him, he withdrew from there, and great multitudes followed him, and he healed them all. See how terrible this guy was? Just blessing people right and left. Yet he warned them not to make him known. Important point here. Why would he do that? Why would he say, don't tell people who I am? I have heard people say, well, that's known as reverse psychology. That's like saying don't to a child. You know, they're going to go right out and do it. No, he would not do that. See, that's deception. And Jesus just wasn't into deception. There really is a very good reason why he would do this. First of all, you must keep in mind that he was Emmanuel, God with us. And I want to put that as a theme here because it's so important, just with us, which his touching of people made it so real and was so significant. It is important to be with people. You know that when someone reaches star power, you know, it's like oh, they become untouchable. He's a star, you know. But Jesus was with people. And sometimes you have to avoid stardom kind of thing in order to keep witness with people. But there was another very significant reason. You see, in Jesus' day, there were numerous zealots, radical activists who had begun to, guys, some of them with real charisma, personal charisma and power, and they would get a following. And when they got what they thought was an adequate following, they would declare themselves Messiah. Say, now that you know who I am, let's go throw off Rome. Oh, multiplied thousands of Jewish people had been killed because of these false messiahs. There would be more yet to come even. And Jesus did not want the work that he was going to do messed up by the baggage that went along with the word Messiah at that particular point. He says, it's like saying, look, you don't have to call me Messiah for me to be that. I mean, you don't have to use that word for me to do the work. I don't have to have the public title in order to be with. So you go out, someone says, I found the Messiah. And you know what everybody else would think? Oh, brother, how many of us are going to get killed this time? So he says, yeah, don't tell anybody yet. So it wasn't reverse psychology at all. He warned them not to make him known, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, Behold, my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will declare justice to the Gentiles. This, by the way, is quoting from Isaiah. He will not quarrel nor cry out, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and smoking flax he will not quench, till he sends forth justice to victory. And in his name the Gentiles will trust. What we see here is another incredible theme development, and that's the theme of his gentleness. Let's put it over here. Let's just say here that he did not use force on people. No force. He was a person of gentleness. A bruised reed he would not break, and smoking flax he would not quench. You wouldn't find him as a rabble-rouser out in the streets at all. No, he didn't need to do that. Bruised reed he wouldn't break. Smoking flax he wouldn't quench. Those are not words we commonly use today, so let me bring you up to speed on that. For a bruised reed he wouldn't break. That's like saying he wouldn't kick a man when he was down. Now that's when we like to kick them. Kick them when they're down, man, because they can't kick back. And some of you, when Jesus found you, you were down, and the world was kicking you like crazy. And Jesus did not come along and say, you've never been kicked till you've had a divine kick. Whap. Yeah. No, he didn't do that. But he picks you up and begins to gently put you back together. How long do you suppose it would take if each of us took the time to tell our whole story of what God has done in our lives and how he has restored and healed and caused us to grow? It would take hours and hours. We don't have that much time. I think that's going to be one of the joys of heaven. We get to hear the whole story, And smoking flax he wouldn't quench. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means he looks for the slightest spark of hope in people and would try to fan it into flame. And so here you are, you see, burst into flame. That's the way he operates. And this passage is one of my very favorites because of that reason. He was the author of mercy, so much so that a bruised reed he wouldn't break. If it was damaged, he wouldn't further damage it. Smoking flax he wouldn't quench. He wouldn't put out. He looked for just the slightest spark of hope and faith in someone. And wouldn't berate them and say, is that all you have? But he'd say, let's see if we can't make this just a little bit stronger. That's called good news, folks. Well, in our harmonized progression, we come now to I don't know how else can we put it except one of the hallmark passages in all of Scripture. In the 5th chapter of Matthew, we come to what is known as the Sermon on the Mount. Most everyone has heard that term. Most everyone has heard words that have come out of it, such as the Beatitudes. It was awesome teaching on the part of Jesus, but the thing that I want you to see that must be one of the themes that we will write down up here is that as Jesus taught, He was moving things away from the mere rote physical into the spiritual. You'll see that in just a moment. I'll bring just one passage to you. I might go to two. He was taking things out of, well, I just did it, that ought to be enough, into what was in your heart. See? It was more important what was here that fueled what you did, rather than that, look, I kept the rules, so leave me alone. Jesus moved things to spirituality. The question was, what was happening inside you? And we find that you can no longer, for instance, just not murder. But we discover how we actually treat someone, the words that we say, even hatred can become equal to murder. How different, you see. And so, Jesus begins to teach them. Seeing the multitudes, He went up on a mountain, and when He was seated, His disciples came to Him, and He opened His mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed, or happy is the other word for that, are the poor in spirit, or the words happy are the humble, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now this is the way anyone starts with the Lord. You don't get anywhere until you've reached that poor in spirit status where you know where you are. No one ever comes to the Lord by saying, well, hey God, I bet you're happy to give me. I mean, I have looks, I have money, I have influence, I have intelligence. Oh, I know you're proud that I have come. No. We have to come with the thought, oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner. We have to recognize where we are. That's starting place with anyone who walks with the Lord. And that's what Jesus is doing. He said, look, until you're there, yours isn't the kingdom of heaven, but when you're there, boy, you're on the steps to the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Mourn. Now, a lot of people mourn that aren't comforted. What is this mourning talking about? Well, when you really are poor in spirit and you see who you truly are, you're sorry for that. We begin to mourn for our sins. Boy, we say, oh God, I'm so sorry. Now, when those two things happen, that means something brand new is existent in us, and it says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. This word meek, we've misunderstood it for so long. Unfortunately, in our language, it rhymes with weak. And people think, oh yeah, happy are the weak. I heard one guy say, yeah, blessed are the meek, they'll inherit the earth, 6 feet of it. Yeah. But listen, folks, meekness is one of the most awesome and powerful things in the world. Meekness is great power under complete control. No one can be meek who is not first strong. No one can be meek who is not first powerful. No one can be meek until first they have something to be meek with. It has the whole thought. My grandfather, by the way, was a farmer and a rancher, and he had a wild horse that he had caught. It was a big horse. It was so tough, he would take it to rodeos. No one ever rode it. But he had tamed it. And he could use that horse to do, it could pull any plow. It was wonderful. He was so proud of that horse. And I thought, that's the connotation of this. It's like this great power harnessed to do something good with it, you see. Blessed are the meek. Now do you understand what he's talking about? That's not the natural me. The natural me is a wild and unregulated person. But meekness is when the power is profitable, finally. and they shall inherit the earth. Well, that's a whole new thing. God has to give me that spirit, see. And blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Well, isn't that a wonderful guarantee? There is no famine in the kingdom of God. Anybody who hungers and thirsts for righteousness will be filled. It's not like God says, hey, we had a bad crop this year. We're a little short on righteousness, so if you'll forgive me, I can't help you this year, but come see me next year, and we'll put you first in line. I mean, we won't have to go through all of the bureaucracy. Oh, no. There is no shortage in the kingdom of heaven. Now, hunger and thirst for righteousness is also, to me, indication that we're kind of newborn in the kingdom. A baby, you don't have to teach a baby how to eat. Have you noticed that? All they are is just one hunger pain lying there. And when we really are in the kingdom and we love the Lord, I want to think of myself as one great big hunger pain for righteousness, God. Whatever I have to, cry if I have to. But I hunger for righteousness. And blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. You see, as you grow in the Lord, you begin to have those higher attributes in you that are basic to Him. Mercy starts coming. You just can't avoid it. We start looking like Jesus. We just can't help it. It's the genetic thing that's there. And as we grow, you can count on our growing in mercy. It's the way. And blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. One of the translations of this is, blessed are the single-minded. In other words, blessed are those who have kind of purified their goals to the point. It's not like, well, I have my religion in a cubbyhole over here. I will see you on Sunday, okay? At least on Christmas and Easter. But most of the time I'm doing this, and then I have this side of my life and this side of my life. No. When you're walking with the Lord, the more you walk with Him, the more He's the only thing you want to walk with. Boy, you've tried everything else. It's so dry and it's so profitless. It's so dead-ended. But when it comes to Him, it's only richness. And so happy are the ones who have purified their heart. Now, this doesn't have much to do, if anything, with just our achieving a certain stage of airy holiness, and really being out of it now. That's not holiness at all. But blessed are those, happy are those whose lives, boy, they are set on course. They are pure in heart. They have purified their directions. And the reason is, when you do that, you see God, see. Once you purify the direction of your heart, once you set it toward heaven, that's when you begin to see the works of God. The thing that fascinates me is, if we don't set our minds and our hearts that way, God will do things and we won't know it was Him. There'll be miracles and people end up saying, well, now wasn't that a neat coincidence? Well, how about that? It's hard to explain this, isn't it? And then they go on. But once your heart is set on the Lord, you begin to see. Did you see what God just did? Wow! And you see it, where otherwise you couldn't. Now, can you see here that Jesus is changing the whole spiritual level of things? It is no longer just, be sure you're there at 9 a.m. on Saturday. No, it's not that at all anymore. It's much bigger than that, much bigger. Instead, it's a spiritual thing that comes from within us. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children or sons of God. Well, of course, if you are one who truly brings peace, and really the only way you can truly bring peace is to introduce the Prince of Peace to a situation. Have you noticed that there is a difference between peace and mere absence of war? See, a lot of people think that bringing peace is creating what's known as a ceasefire. And the people are still there with the guns. They're aimed. And it's cocked. But they simply haven't pulled the trigger. And some will say, isn't it wonderful? Finally peace has come to them. No, it hasn't either. That's just a ceasefire. It's just a momentary cessation of war. True peace does not come until the Prince of Peace is here. Now, in some ways you can see this as a growing level of spirituality, an increasing level of spirituality as you grow in the Lord. The thing is, what does the top look like? When you have really reached what might be called a great level of spirituality. What does it look like? Ready for this? Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Ay, persecution? In fact, he goes on and says, blessed or happy are you. Now that sounds like an oxymoron to me. You know what I mean by that? Mutually exclusive terms, you know. That's like hot ice. It just can't be that sort of thing, you know, or cold steam. I mean, you just don't have that. Blessed are you, or happy are you when they revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Doesn't that sound like a party? But he goes on and he says, rejoice. There's our theme. Rejoice and be exceeding glad. I'm an old farm boy, Doss. That's whoopee! For great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I don't know if you've ever participated in, say, a testimony session, a report in where we're demonstrating the action of God in our lives over a period of time. And have you ever heard anyone get up and say, oh, this is so wonderful. They're lying about me out there. They're saying some of the worst things you have ever heard, and it's not true. And it's because of Jesus. This is wonderful. We have this tendency, do we not, to say, oh, they're lying about me out there. And it's terrible. When Jesus says, no, it's wonderful. Be thankful they're lying. What if they were telling the truth? So rejoice and be exceeding glad. And with this thing that we have come to call the Beatitudes, he establishes a whole new world. Not the old physical one, but the spiritual one, where godly activity will not be that you cut your hair a certain way or wore certain clothing or anything of that, but it becomes, all right, where is your heart now? What does it mean to be truly humble, poor in spirit, to know the reality of your situation and to accurately portray it? Well, that's only the beginning. He has so many things to say in this particular series and these passages. In the Sermon on the Mount, he talks about giving. And he says, hey, when you give, don't make a show of it. Don't even let your right hand know what your left hand's doing. What? Now what he's saying, folks, is that, boy, I may as well get a little controversial in the course of this. Anytime we are honored because of our giving, we have violated this passage. See? Anytime if I were to say, if I were a rich man, anytime I were to say, well, look, I'll give you this amount of money if you will name this building after me, I have just violated the words of Jesus. And all the reward I will ever get will be on that tacked on name on that building. He taught about praying. Matthew chapter 6. The apostles have come to Jesus actually, and they said, John taught, it's not recorded here that they said, but there's other places. John taught his disciples how to pray. It's not like we're complaining, Jesus, but just want you to know what they're doing in other places. John taught his disciples how to pray. Why don't you teach us? And Jesus says, beginning with verse 5, when you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the corners of the street. You know what they would do back then? They'd literally hire people To go and corner folks and say, look at this guy. He is praying. Isn't that awesome? Have you ever seen anyone praying like that before? This is just great. Don't you think so? Isn't he a wonderful man? By the way, his name is, And they would be hired to do that. Street corners and what have you. Jesus says, don't be like that. But when you pray, it's kind of like giving, isn't it? Go into your room, and when you have shut your door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Now, he establishes something there that is spiritual. See, if I want to be seen of you praying, that's not a spiritual thing at all. I'm wanting glory from men. Wanting glory from men. What if that was like the only time I would be nice to my wife is if you're watching? See what I mean? And if you really love someone, you're nice to him at all times. If you really love God, you just want to talk to him. You don't care whether people see you or not. You're not interested in whether they see you. You just want to talk to him. And he says, go into your room. Close the door. And when you pray in secret, the Father will see you in secret and will reward you openly. And when you pray, do not use vain repetition as the heathen do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. I almost wish Jesus hadn't said that, because I find myself violating that so often. You see, we don't always know the difference between just keep asking, keep seeking, and just mere vain repetition. I said it again, 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 I said it again. Did you heard me yet? You see, it doesn't take vain repetition for the Father to hear us. His hearing is very good. His ear isn't heavy. He doesn't slumber or sleep, We have His complete attention at all times. And His presence at all times. He's not over somewhere and He's saying, look, Erwin, I'll be back next Thursday, okay? I'm going to be real busy for a while. No. He is here. You don't have to pray to get Him here. He's already here. We understand that. What if I were to treat you, say, the way we sometimes treat God in prayer? I've forgotten your name. No. Kevin. I want to talk to you. Please, Kevin, hear me. I want to talk to you, Kevin, please. Are you here, Kevin? It'd be saying, oh, brother, how'd I get friends like you? Or suppose if I thought that He were distant or disinterested. And though He is watching me, and if I understood this, it would change things. And, Kevin, I want to talk to you, Kevin. Please talk to me. All right already. I'm right here, Erwin. And it dawned on me once that, if you remember the old story of Elijah on Mount Carmel and the prophets of Baal who were trying to get Baal to do something. Unfortunately, though, Baal didn't even exist, And so they were really praying loud, even jumping up and down. They were cutting themselves, beating themselves. And Elijah was over there making fun of them, saying, hey, pray a little louder. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's he's gone to the toilet or something, pray a little, and they would, the people would pray louder. And it dawned on me once that maybe I spend more time praying like the prophets of Baal than I do like Elijah, who, when it came his turn, just said, well, God, prove yourself. Wham! Here came the fire, you see. And so Jesus is teaching something about prayer. And it's a spiritual thing. It depends upon your understanding of who God is and your relationship with Him rather than on any of the physical things. Please keep this in mind. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't pray loud. The Bible even says that Jesus, sometimes with loud cries and with great agony, there are moments that are like Garden of Gethsemane moments in our lives. But that doesn't have to do with God being distant or needing. It has to do with our situation. Not with any distance of God. But your Father hears. This is a declaration. Your Father hears in secret. And what Jesus was doing here was destroying all physical things that we tend to attach to prayer. Let me say a couple other things about this to show you how this hits us. Suppose I were to say to you, let us pray. There would be two immediate actions. Ding, the eyes would close. Ding, the head would bow, right? It's just like, that's the only way you can pray, isn't it? Now, why do we do that? Does the Bible say, thou shalt close thine eyes and bow thine head when thou prayest? It doesn't say that. In fact, if you read, as we read in the Bible, you discover that Jesus, when he prayed, tended to open his eyes and look up. Now, if you want to have people wondering what to do next, pray that way. Let us pray. Father, and they're going. They don't know what to do. Aren't you supposed to close your eyes and bow your head? But you see, any kind of physical representation, Jesus destroyed it here. Just as he did any of the rituals and places that we tend to find necessary for prayer or for worship. As he met with the woman at the well, he destroyed that. No, it becomes a spiritual thing. It's a relationship with your Heavenly Father. And it's the joy of just talking to him. And then he says, in this manner, therefore, pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We honor you. Now, one of the things about prayer, folks, is that prayer, by its very nature, spiritual prayer comes from an humble heart. The very fact that you pray is a recognition that there is somebody greater than you to whom you owe some allegiance. And the very act of praying in a spiritual way. Now, of course, there is obviously prayer. Jesus was pointing it out. That is not spiritual at all. And it merely is to be seen of men as a man of brow. But prayer that is spiritual is also very humble. It is saying, you're God, I am not. Our Father in heaven, we honor your name. Now, in the course of this or the next, and it won't be this one, the next session maybe. No, maybe it will be this one. No, it'll be the next. Jesus says a little bit about using his name. Now, when you honor someone's name, that meant so much more back then than it means to us today. Later we'll discover that Jesus says, you can now ask in my name. Now, for a long time in my life, when I was young, I thought the words, in the name of Jesus, were magic words. You add it to the end of every prayer and it makes it work. Doesn't matter what you prayed. You can say, kill him, Lord, in the name of Jesus. But you see, that's not the way it works at all. And let me just say this at this moment. Hopefully we can get back into it because this is such an important area. When Jesus is using this word, in the name of Jesus, or hallowed be thy name, it was more than just a set of letters. Suppose, for instance, I were to say to Kevin, or to say to you, I'm going to steal these TV cameras because Kevin told me to do it. You'd say, get out of here. He would never do that. That's the point. That's the point. If I use his name, I have to do things the way he would do it, or it is not in his name, even if I use his name. You want me to repeat that? Oh, okay. Glad to, if I can. If I use his name, I have to do things the way he would do it, or it is not in his name, even if I use his name. So that when I pray in the name of Jesus, I have to pray the kind of prayer that he would want to fulfill, that he would want. Otherwise, I'm not praying in his name. I'm using it. Now, in the 7th chapter of Matthew, we find Jesus saying these words. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to do it the whole time I'm with you. Jesus in the 7th chapter of Matthew makes this powerful statement, verse 21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not cast out demons in your name and done many mighty wonders or works in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.'" What? You mean he is saying you can do things, even what appear to be good, in his name, and it's still not in his name? That's exactly what he's saying. Now, further evidence of this, and this is also to me so very important. 1 John chapter 5 has this statement that as we look at the Lord's Prayer will become so evident. This is the confidence we have in Him, it says, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And we know that if He hears us, we have the petition we desire of Him. So you see, praying in His name isn't merely using the letters right so that it sounds like you said His name. No, it means that your prayer is in keeping with who He really is. Now, we're going to build this as we go along, so keep that in mind. Your prayer, we know now, must not be selfishly ambitious. Oh, further evidence of that. James says you don't have because you don't ask. Then he goes on and he says, you ask and don't have because you ask amiss that you may consume it upon your own lusts. See, God does not have a stake in a selfish prayer. So right off the bat, you can know that He will not be answering a self-centered prayer. So this is the kind of thing I'm saying. This is a description of the way He is, or His name. Now when we come to God the Father, hallowed be thy name. In Exodus 34:6, God defines His name to Moses. Moses had asked for that in Exodus 33 when he says, I want to see you. Show me your glory. And God says, okay, I'll define my name, or preach my name, or proclaim my name, or explain my name. And in Exodus 34:6, just shortening all of this, He comes and explains or defines His name to Moses, and He says that He is Yahweh, Yahweh, or the name, or Jehovah, Jehovah, if you want to believe that's what it was, or so forth. And then He defines it, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in mercy and faithfulness, mercy to thousands, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Awesome. Oh, He does go on and say, yet not letting the guilty go unpunished, visiting the sins of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations. However, that is only for those who hate Him. So those who love the Lord, that one doesn't even apply. The curse is gone. So you see, when you understand, hallowed be thy name, and you understand what His name is like, you can honor Him. Oh, I honor you because you're compassionate, and you're gracious, and you're slow to anger, you're patient, you're long-suffering, and you abound in mercy and faithfulness, and you have mercy for the thousands, really, literally for the thousands generation, and you forgive wickedness, rebellion, and sin. You can honor Him for that. Who else but God can you honor for that? And if you take the time to honor His name, then you will be able to pray the rest of the prayer. I'm convinced that unless I do that, I can't pray the rest of the prayer. Here's why. The next one says, thy kingdom come. How do you know when His kingdom's coming? If you don't know what it looks like. If you don't know what the king's like, how will you know when the king's here? But actually, that's more personal than that. What we are saying is, I want you to dominate me. It's a very personal part of this prayer. I want you to be king in my life. I want you to be in charge of me. Dominate me. Now, when you know what He's like, you want Him to dominate you. If anybody's going to be in charge of my life, I want them to be compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in mercy and faithfulness, love to thousands, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Which is why I don't want to be in charge of my life. But when you know what He is like, when you know what His name is, see, this is the definition of His name, then now not only do you want to honor Him, not only do you want Him to be in charge of your life, but now you can pray intelligently, Thy will be done. On earth as it is in heaven. Why? Because you know what His will would be. You know that it would be compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, abounding in mercy and faithfulness, mercy to thousands, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. So you can pray in keeping with the nature of the Father or in keeping with His will. Then you know He will hear you. You know you will have the petitions you desire of Him. You see. So you see, Jesus is taking the whole thing and turning it into a spiritual thing. But He goes on and He says, and give us this day our daily bread. Now, I don't know of any prayer that could control greed better than that. See, I have this tendency to want to pray, and give me today next year's daily bread. That way I won't have to bother you, God. But He knows that if He gives me next year's bread today, I'll eat it today. But I really think there's a much bigger meaning, a far higher spiritual meaning of this. Jesus says, I am the bread of life. And so when I'm really praying this in a spiritual way, oh God, give me my daily dose of Jesus today. Turn your face toward me. Jesus is the face of God. Turn your face toward me today. I want to make sure that I experience Jesus in my life today. Give me today my daily bread. And forgive my sins. Aha! We've come to another theme of Scripture, forgiveness of the Gospels. Forgive us our sins. God loves to forgive. It is His nature. God doesn't have to be worked into forgiveness. He doesn't have to be psyched into forgiveness. He doesn't have to be talked into forgiveness. It's His nature. So when we pray, forgive our sins, we don't have to think, I wonder if He did. He does. Over and over you'll find this true in Scripture. Even John carries the theme on into his letters when he says, if we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to think about it. No. To forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. But because this is His nature and there is this new genetic thing happening in us, our forgiveness from God must also precipitate forgiveness for other people. It has to be the way we are. As we forgive those who sin against us. As I look at this and I look at the nature of Jesus and I understand what the Gospels are, the good news, more and more I understand forgiveness is so central that nothing turns you into a healthy person more than being able to forgive. I have spent hours as a counselor. Hours as a counselor. I have watched as people talked about their being victims. How do I get over this? And how do I get over that? Folks, the way to guarantee that you will never be a victim is to forgive. Until you forgive someone, they have power over you. Do you realize that? They control your thoughts, they control your actions, they control your reactions. But the moment you forgive them, you're totally free from that person. They no longer are in charge of your life in any way. And so, when we forgive, we've reached ultimate health. It is the secret, folks. It's the vitamin that you've been looking for. It's the shot. It's the pill. It's the whatever you want to call it. If you're just thinking, boy, it's the fountain of youth. Forgive. And Lead us not into temptation. In other words, God, I'm so enthralled with you. I love you so much. I want to get ahead of the game. I don't want you to have to test me. I want to go ahead and test myself, judge myself. I want to get ahead of the game so that you don't even have to lead me into temptation. And I so value your kingdom, God, and my part in it that I don't even want to get near evil, God. Deliver me from it. For thine is the kingdom and the power. Now you see, most of this world's wanting to say, for mine is the kingdom and the power. I'm in charge here. But no, we who know him and know the reality of ourselves are glad to say, thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Boy, our time's almost up. I got to get fasting. It's okay to fast. Just don't let me know. See, the thing is, it's spiritual. It's not money. Use it in a way that you send it on ahead of you, you see. You can't serve two masters. You're going to love one and hate the other. The only way you make it in the kingdom of God, money-wise, see, money's a physical thing. How do you turn it spiritual? You learn to be generous. You give it away. Then it becomes spiritual. Until then, and anxiety, don't fret. Oh, what's going to happen? Are you worried, God? I sure am worried, God said, no, I'm not really worried. In fact, you don't have to. I like you a whole lot more than I do a sparrow. And if I like you more than sparrows, and if I have taken such time to craft a lily, what do you think I've done with you? So one of my little projects in life is, God, I don't want to get nervous until you do. So don't take thought for tomorrow. And judgment. Judge not that you be not judged, for with what judgment you judge you shall be. Jesus is saying so many things here. Oh, it's awesome. He says, don't try to pull a splinter out of your neighbor's eye when there's a plank, a log in your own. Jesus was funny. Can you go to an eye doctor, and you're sitting there in that darkened room waiting for the doctor to show up because you got this problem with your eye, and he comes in and he turns around and there's just logs coming out. Are you going to let him operate on your eyes? Oh no. First he says, take the log out of your eye. Now, can you imagine? The thought of it, just take the... Anyone who has had a log removed from his eye is going to be very careful with eyes. Then you can see clearly, he says, to remove the splinter. And you know a tree by its fruit. Jesus is saying it isn't that you know a tree just by its leaves. I once had in my yard a peach tree. It had been there for many years. But I only lived there for 5 years. And I was glad when I bought the house I had a peach tree. I like peaches. Problem is, it never had a peach. Looked like a peach tree. Smelled like a peach tree. Just never had a peach. What if I came to it and said, with a hatchet in hand, cut you down? And it spoke to me and said, no. Don't cut me down. In my heart, I'm a peach tree. Didn't plant you for peach hearts. I planted you for peach fruit. Jesus says, by their fruit you will know them. But let me close this off. I got to here with this last thing. He says, as he closes this sermon, he says, now whoever hears my words and does them will be like the man who builds his house on a rock. Application of Scripture is the highest form of Bible study. You may be the smartest, you may have more PhDs than you can even count. But if you don't do the Word, it's as if you're totally ignorant. The man who hears my words and does them, if it does not emanate from your life, then it is a wasted experience. He says, if he does them, he'll be like building his house on the rock. Otherwise, he's like building his house on the sand. And the rains come and the winds blow and beat upon that house. Now, please note that the rains come and beat on both houses. Some people say, why is God letting this storm happen to my house? Rain falls on the just and the unjust, folks. The sun shines on the just and the unjust. But when you build your house on the rock, it stands. if you hear his words and do them. And Jesus was taking everything godly and taking it out of the ritual and legal side and turning it spiritual. Amen.